Hi everyone, it's Kristen. So in the last video, we talked more about the movie version of New Mutants, and today we're actually going to introduce them and talk about the comic book where they're featured. And you notice how you can see Cannonball, Sunspot, Rain, and Danny, and this is actually Karma. She was not featured in the movie. And it's interesting because in the New Mutants, Ileana Magic didn't even join the New Mutants until issue 15. Karma is actually a very complicated, very tragic figure. And I'm really honestly, I guess they already had Danny being the tragic, complicated person, so they couldn't really have two characters like that in the same movie because they already had Danny basically being the main character. So Karma is from Vietnam. Her dad died during the war. She escaped with her mom and her two younger siblings in a boat, but the boat to go to the U.S., to come here to the U.S., but the boat was attacked by pirates, and unfortunately they raped her and her mom. And her mom actually died soon after. She couldn't take it. She just couldn't deal with it. So she came to the U.S. with her two siblings, and Professor Xavier approached her, and she's like, "No, I'm not going to do that. I need to take care of my siblings." And Xavier said, "Well, here, I'll train you, but I'll also give you a job so you can help support your siblings." Which she's a little bit older than the other New Mutants, and obviously she's had a lot more life experience, so to speak. Another thing about her is she has the ability to possess people. She can possess them, control their thought, control their actions. Basically, if they have powers, she can control their powers because she controls them. She can also put people to sleep. Yeah. Another thing about her is she actually had a twin brother who had the same powers as her, and her uncle was a general in the army and a warlord, and he wanted Karma to come work for him, like her brother was doing. And where she was horrified by the thought, using her powers, to do people harm, her brother, relished in it. He loved it. He thought that was great. And so at one point she ends up battling her brother and possessing him. And basically she eats him. she's possessed him, and basically all of him goes into her. So, and it's kind of like that whole where you hear about twins like eating the other one in the womb. That's kind of what it reminded me of. So at this point, since she had her powers and she gained her brother's powers, her powers like doubled. And then she, like I said, Xavier approached her and gave her a job. Okay, so we open on Stevie Hunter, who's like one of the instructors at the Xavier school, and you might remember her from, she's a Danish teacher. You might remember her from God Loves, Man Kills. And you can see, here's Sunspot, Roberto. You can see, well, if you notice the two skin colors, they're both pretty much the same. I mean, they're, in terms of being much darker than everybody else's. And then you see Sam, Danny, Rain, and here's Karma, which her name's San. And here they're kind of making fun of her because of her hair, and Stevie's trying to help her. And what happens is Danny doesn't even realize what she's doing, and she reaches into Karma's mind and pulls out all these images of what we just talked about. Her father being killed, her escaping with her mom and her 2 younger siblings in a boat, being raped by pirates. And as you can imagine, Karma-san is very upset. Like I would be too. Danny pulled out her greatest shame and just her embarrassment and just, I mean, I couldn't even imagine. I wouldn't want people to know that about me. Especially people I don't really know, because at this point they don't know each other that well. And so for that to be broadcast to everyone, that would just be very hurtful. So basically she leaps on her and Stevie tries to pull her off, and then she possesses Stevie, like causing her to, be in shock, be still. And Roberto slaps her across the face, saying to like jolt her out of it. And she's like, how could you? How dare you? Like I can't, if it was up to me, I would make you suffer. And so, Stevie tells everyone, hey, go take a walk, let's all just cool off. And so Danny, she walks off by herself, goes to the mansion, goes to Kitty's room, and then goes to Storm's attic. And the X-Men at this point are off in space fighting the Brood. Brood. I think I'm saying that right. See, the thing about comic books is you see the names and you read them how you think they are, but that might not be how they actually are. So if I ever say anything wrong, that's embarrassing, but I'm sorry. But you feel free to, correct me or anything, because then I'll know. Then I'll know how to pronounce it. So you see, this is actually Ileana and Moira McTaggart, Rain's adopted mom, basically. And they are in London at the Israeli embassy because they meet Gabrielle Haller, which I don't know if you guys know, but that is Gabrielle has asked them there because she needs Moira's help about a mutant, and Moira's like, well, why don't you just ask Charles, because he's the expert on mutants. And she's like, I can't ask Charles because it's his son. So this is David, Legion. Okay, I don't know if you guys if you watched the Fox show, Legion. Man, that show was pretty trippy. I mean, it was pretty crazy. I had one friend that said they could only watch 1 episode at a time. Like, they tried to watch 2, and it was just too much for them. So they were like, no, I can only watch 1 at a time. So, I mean, I've been binge watched the whole, 3rd season. There's only 3 seasons, so I've been binge watched, 2 or 3 seasons in a couple days. But anyway, if you feel like being seriously tripped out, I would recommend that show. Definitely interesting. I watched it thinking there'd be more of a reference to the X-Men. No, but of course that's Fox, and they weren't really kind of allowed to talk about that. Of course, Xavier is mentioned, but more so only as a father, not really by name until the 3rd season, because they probably weren't allowed to say that. Kind of just like the Avengers. In the movies, they couldn't call Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch mutants because of the whole trademark issue, I guess. I don't know what's going on. But hopefully, one of these days, maybe in 20 years, we'll have a new X-Men movies, X-Men Avengers crossover. That'd be awesome. Anyway, here I go off on a tangent again. But Legion is responsible for one of the best storylines of the X-Men Age of Apocalypse. He goes back in time in order to realize his father's dream, help him realize his father's dream, of peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. And he does that he goes back in time to kill Magneto. And what he accidentally does is he kills Xavier instead. And that triggers Age of Apocalypse, which is a really good storyline, which we'll have to talk about later too, because like I said, it's a really good storyline. There's so many good storylines. So here you see all the kids. Professor Xavier is kind of explaining the danger room to them. And he shows them, like, hey, look, it can be transformed into a holographic environment of basically anything, because it's based on, Shi'ar technology, which is way more advanced than our Earth technology. So basically, he sets everyone through their paces. Cannonball, he's, virtually indestructible when he's blasting. But if he, gets distracted and forgets, then he's no longer invulnerable. And then Rain, she can shift into her wolf form. And so basically, one by one, they have everyone, go through the danger room. The object is to get from one side of the danger room to the other. And then they have, a team exercise, because nobody's able to get from one end of the danger room to the other. And Danny, who goes by Mirage, she refuses. She runs off. And Rain, since they have that bond, since Danny is the only one that can talk to her in her wolf form, she goes after her and says, hey, what's wrong? And Danny's like, hey, did they send you? And she's like, no, I came on my own. And Danny kind of confides in her and saying, I hate my powers. They've ruined my life. I have no friends because of them. I wish I didn't have them. And Rain confesses, that her powers, she feels conflicted about them too, like we talked about in the previous video. She can shift into wolf form, but she feels like she shouldn't because of her religious upbringing and her abusive father. You later learn that the abusive pastor was her father and her mother was a prostitute. But anyway, he drilled into her head, he was very religious and drilled that into her head, and so she feels like whenever she's in her wolf form, she's evil, and the whole conflict over whether she doesn't know whether her wolf form is her true form or if her human girl is her true form. And she's like, sometimes I just wish I could stay a wolf forever because it's simpler, it's it's freer, and and Danny says, I'd miss you if you did that. And she's like, well, Rain's like, well, I could never do that because I would miss my friends. And so apparently they're going into town, and so she's like, hey, come with us. And Danny's like, no. And Rain jumps through the window in her wolf form, and everyone's like, hey, watch it, cut it out. Anyway. And you see Gyrick, he's, the whole anti-mutant, Sentinel program, that Gyrick. He's watching the kids, and Mirage, Danny, decides to go to the danger room, and she's proved to herself that she can do it. And so, lo and behold, she's the only one that can do it and makes it to the end of the room because of growing up in, her Cheyenne Indian background. She, played among the forest and mountains and all this stuff, so she's pretty nimble and agile. And then you see that someone overrides the sequencing and basically puts her in danger. And we find out later it's Professor X being mind controlled by the Brood. Anyway, so a couple of things about the movie that I forgot to mention is that one of the the one-liners in the movie's like, I don't think this is a hospital. It's kind of like, well, duh. Of course it's not a hospital. But I just thought that was funny. And then the whole, trust me, I'm a doctor. That was funny too when Dr. Reeves says that. So anyway, so that's the New Mutants. Like I said, Ileana is not really a New Mutant at this point. You see her, and when Danny went into Kitty's room, Ileana and Kitty share a room, and so there's a picture of Ileana on the board, and then she goes with Moira, which is interesting. Instead of Rain, her adopted daughter, to meet with Gabrielle, So I feel like that's foreshadowing by their part, on their part, to say, hey, she's gonna be a new mutant. That's why she keeps popping up. So, like I said, she's a very interesting character. We will definitely be talking about her. There's so much. She has a really long, long, complicated history story. So we will definitely be talking about her again. And plus, I think she's one of the most interesting characters because she has that complicated backstory. So yeah, that's it for this one. Like I said, this is not their first appearance in the New Mutants. They actually were in a graphic novel, and that's where Sam met Lila Cheney, which you'll see in the next in New Mutants issue 29. That actually becomes pretty important. So I hope you join me for that, because that's what we're talking about next, and that's where we meet the Gladiators and catch up with Dazzler again. So I hope you join me for that. Until next time, bye.